Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Sokol, the president of the American Council on Germany, and each week the ACG checks in with a Berlin-based journalist to talk about emerging news stories and breaking news. And as many of you know, we are simultaneously hosting our weekly Kaffeepause, What's a Buzz in Berlin, on both Clubhouse and on Zoom. In any case, I hope that all of you have a cup of coffee at the ready for today's conversation with Matthias Deiss. Hello, Matthias. It is good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Good morning from Berlin across the Great Lake. Here it's 3 p.m., so I had enough coffee for today. Yeah, you should have one. Thank you for standing up so early for me. I'm at the moment in home office. Corona is really forcing us to separate. Situation is not is as tight as in the last month. So I'm really happy to have you to be discussing with you over the cup of coffee. And thank you, Stephen, for the invitation.
Well, Matthias, we're delighted to have you, and you've been a good friend of the ACG for many, many years. For those of you who are not familiar with Matthias, he is the editorial director of ARD's regular show Kontraste, but he has big news because he is soon to be the deputy head of ARD's Berlin studio, and he will be following politics very, very closely. So we are delighted to have you today to sort of measure the pulse of what's going on in the political scene in Germany, but also, as you started to talk about, with regard to the pandemic and COVID response. So let's dive right in. Late last week, over the weekend, two polls put the Green Party slightly ahead of the CDU-CSU, and it seems as though they are likely to be in the next government coalition, whatever that government coalition might look like. But it's still a long way until the election in September. So, Matthias, how much stock do you put in these polls 5 months ahead of the election?
Yeah, let me begin with the last week, because this was really very, very interesting. And now we have less question marks than before, because from now on, we are knowing who is running for being the next chancellor in Germany, a situation we were not about 1 week before. So this is clear. 3 candidates are running, 1 woman, and the candidate from the Green, Annalena Baerbock, she pretty had a good start off. And I also read these 2 polls, which you were referring to. I really think you can definitely say at the moment, both conservatives and social democrats in Germany put enough stock into these polls to take her as a very, very serious opponent when it comes to the election campaign now. I would say for both of the other candidates, she is, or the Greens are, the main opponent. So having said that, you were just mentioning, it is still a long way to go. When I look at the polls at the moment, I not only see big sympathy for Annalena Baerbock, the new Green candidate, I see also a lot of disappointment with the Corona management in Germany, with the Corona crisis in Germany, with the vaccination campaign, not only in Germany, but also in Europe. Everybody in Germany is looking towards Israel, is looking towards the United States, and is seeing that things are getting better there, that the things are better managed there when it comes to vaccination. And here in Germany, you may not forget, you cannot forget, a lot of people are sitting in a very, very tight situation. Since November, restaurants are closed here in Germany, bars are closed, schools are closed over a very long period. And of course, people are afraid of getting this disease, losing relatives, and 83,000 people at the moment have died in Germany. So this is the situation, and this is what you cannot forget if you read the polls right now. Having said this, the situation can change because now more vaccine doses are flooding into the country from the Pfizer, from AstraZeneca, and you have 5 months. So we could have a different situation in September when it comes to the votes. And so I say nobody should underestimate the Greens, but the election is far from done at the moment.
So let's come back to sort of the response to the pandemic and what's going on in that regard a little bit later in our conversation, and stick with politics for just a second. You know, you touched on it. I think it's fair to say that Annalena Baerbock and the Greens took a very different path from Armin Laschet and the CDU-CSU in terms of how each of these candidates ultimately secured the nomination for their party or coalition to be the Kanzlerkandidat or Kanzlerkandidatin. And you know, undoubtedly there will be some fallout from the back and forth between Armin Laschet and Markus Söder and the public displays. I guess one question I have for you is how damaged do you think the CDU-CSU are after the relatively difficult campaign? And perhaps as a footnote to that, although I thought that it was relatively clear that Armin Laschet was the Kanzlerkandidat, it sounds as though Markus Söder has been making some jabs about his colleague Armin Laschet even after the decision was made. How is that playing right now?
Yeah, well, on the one hand, there's no doubt there is damage. The last weeks were causing damage. It's really obvious. There is now somebody running for chancellor who has not the full support of CDU-CSU, of the union, of the CSU, but also not of his own party. And this came to the top during the fight CDU and CSU have. And in 5 months ahead of the election, this is definitely not a good start. And you were referring to the polls. So that's another point. But on the other hand, let's for a moment rethink what really happened. After more than 15 years of Chancellor Angela Merkel, under the same political leader. I mean, in the United States, you have 8 years, so you're much more used to a change of the top position. Yeah, we are more than 15 years under the same political leader. There are children or not people with 15 years who never knew another chancellor than Angela Merkel. Yeah? Think about what US presidents in that time you had. And after the 15 years, Europe's biggest state and economy needs a new chancellor. And within the union, there was more than one candidate for her successor. In the USA, you would have really, for you, it's normal to have this brutal primaries in the parties, and they are going on for months. They had a fight for 1 or 2 weeks. But we as Germans, journalists, politicians, and also the voters, we are not used to that fights anymore that much. So for us, it seems like a really brutal kind of play in front of the whole country. It's over now. And no matter what damage has to be done, Markus Söder now really needs to show the support for the winner, his support for the winner. If he doesn't get to that point, and the last week you referred to that points, he didn't do a too good job in that. He really needs to do it because the CDU and CSU, these sister parties which come together as a so-called union in the political system of Germany, they always were most successful when they were united, fighting together. The enemy is not inside, the political enemy is outside. If they are split up or divided in an election campaign, this is really dangerous for Armin Laschet. And he has to do everything he can to get everybody behind him now. And he also has to get everything he can to get rid of this loser image, which he has at the moment on him. And it's Markus Söder's fault that it's on him, because he said, with this guy, we're not going to win. I'm the winner. So this is a big damage which we have at the moment. But we have Armin Laschet has 5 months to solve this problem. What I'm always thinking about is that it's really for the government party in Germany, it's really a situation which we had last time when Helmut Kohl was losing the election. 5 months before the elections, that CDU is such a bad shape. But then think of the beginning of the 2000s, Gerhard Schröder, who was the chancellor of the Social Democrats at that time, started into the election campaign, and he was political almost dead. Nobody would bet a penny on Gerhard Schröder, and in the end, he won. So, let's not close this race. Let's not close this story, because the most interesting chapters are coming within the next months.
So in terms of those interesting chapters, let's maybe open the chapter on the Social Democrats, who you've mentioned a couple times in the conversation. The sad chapter of the Social Democrats, who have been losing traction in each of the national elections over the last 3 or 4 national elections, and who seem to be absent at the moment, although they are a governing party. Where does the SPD fit into all of this right now?
Yeah, I mean, really, I said the sad story because imagine the union is going down in the polls from 35 to maybe 20, 28 at the moment. So there's a big gap to be filled. There's chances, new chances. And what are the Social Democrats doing? They are also losing in this part of German history at the moment. The last polls, they are 15 to 13%. That is really, nothing is moving up. Nothing is getting better. This is really the candidate of the Social Democrats, Olaf Scholz. He's really highly respected in Germany. He's vice chancellor. He's a finance minister, a heavy political weight. I think also he's trusted in Germany as somebody who is reliable. But in this situation, he's not winning anything. In the political discussion, nobody is believing that the Social Democrats or the SPD are on the way back. And a lot of people don't have imagination, because in Germany you vote for the party and not for the chancellor. How the Social Democrats should find a way up to number 1 in this elections. And also, you mentioned before, there are different constellations and coalitions possible. But if Olaf Scholz and the Social Democrats want to be chancellor, they need to be the number 1 in these coalitions. And at the moment, nobody sees how this should work out. making the situation even more interesting and really new is that both of the parties in government at the moment, Union or SPD, CDU and SPD, are struggling somehow. And after so long time in government, people are a little bit in connection with the Corona crisis, are a little bit willing to try something new at the moment. And this is the selling point the Greens fit into, or run into, force into, say, you want something new? We are the new. We are the change. We are the modern party at the moment. We have the young people. We are addressing the new and or the real big problems of the society at the moment, and maybe it's the time for a real change, because the old have to be renew themselves in opposition.
So before we turn to the Greens, one of our viewers suggests that Olaf Scholz might not have the Social Democratic Party fully behind him, and that could be part of the problem as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. He was running as a party leader some time ago, and his party said not Olaf Scholz. Really not Olaf Scholz, because he's and so he lost against some candidates, against two candidates of the left wing, who really so he has not the support of the full party by then. But after them, this new candidates, this new party leaders showed that they are not the ones who can be chancellor, and this was fully aware for the whole party, and they were suggesting him as a Kanzlerkandidat. And at the moment, I think the SPD is pretty united behind this team. The left party leaders on the one hand, and the reliable heavyweight Olaf Scholz on the other hand. The interesting question would be, if it comes to govern, who is setting the course of this government. But I think Olaf Scholz's biggest problem is not the unity in his party at the moment. It's that the voters don't see the unique selling points of the Social Democrats. They have not forgotten a lot of things which were the Social Democrats implied on Germany within the Schröder area. These are the more important problems of the Social Democrats, I would say.
So, as you said, for both the Social Democrats and for the Christian Democrats, the party to watch is the Greens. It is,
absolutely,
something new. They've managed recently to draw support away from both of the traditional Volksparteien for different reasons. And I think that, as you said, it could also be sort of the novelty of the party and the novelty of Annalena Baerbock as the leader of that party, new ideas. But how much do you think that the current support for the Greens is motivated by sort of a lack of confidence in the status quo and in the traditional parties, and might also apply sort of some pressure for the CDU and CSU and the SPD to change their tack over the coming months?
I think it's a good question, because of course we have also to discuss the weak points of the Greens, and there are some heavy weak points, and these points could or will get into focus the closer the election comes on the one hand, and the better the Corona situation or the vaccination situation in Germany gets. There is somebody running for chancellor who has never in her life governed anything, with 40 years, pretty young, has no experience in governing at all. At the moment, she says, well, that's my selling point because I'm the new one and the old didn't work out. But I think journalists, political opponents, and in the end, also the voters will ask questions on that point because, of course, you can learn governing. And of course, experience helps. That's my point of view. But really, and this is, from my perspective, a weak point for Annalena Baerbock. And it's also easier to come from an opposition point she had than within the government. So now she really has to say what she wants or will make better, what her personal plans are, and how she's ready for this big job. And I'm very interested in her answers, but there are a lot of answers needed from her. Yeah, because
and I think to her credit, she recognizes that, and she recognizes some of the criticism and weaknesses. I guess it was over the weekend she held her big foreign policy speech or interview and talked a lot about China. Of course, China being a very important point as far as Germany's foreign policy, but also in terms of the transatlantic relationship. How did her sort of foreign policy points resonate with people in Germany? Did people have confidence in what it was that she was saying?
I think we are not quite at this point. At the moment, we just had the decision she's running 1 week over. So at the moment, you have still the surprise moment. You have this getting to know her moment. You have still this, are there somebody fresh coming? There's somebody new coming. And the start, as I said, wasn't bad. But within the next weeks, there is enough time to look at her very closely, from the media, from the political opponents, and of course from the voters too. And I think she knows that next month will be a very tough time for her, but the start was good. She has a good chance. And she has a more or less completely united party behind her at the moment. And of course, that helps. If you remember the Greens in Germany, they were the chaos party for long years, discussing, arguing, throwing things at each other on election gatherings. This is completely over. And they want to govern. This has also not been the case all the time. They really want to govern now. They want the power now. And they know they have to stand as one woman behind. They have to be really united and to take the chances. And so again, there's a new candidate. There's a very interesting candidate, but she will be examined very, very, very closely within the next weeks and months. And I'm not sure. The start was good, but I'm not sure how she will, pass through this difficult time. We'll see.
Well, and of course, it's an eternity in politics, the amount of time between now and the election, and a lot can happen. We certainly hope to be able to check in with you again a few times between now and the election to get your take on what's going on. But let's maybe switch gears a little bit, because of course, as you talked about at the beginning, all of this is happening against the backdrop of a pandemic and the need to come to terms with COVID-19. You shared with us a little bit about the Stimmung in Germany with regard to the pandemic. But today is yet another meeting between the federal government and the states, a Bund-Länder meeting. And today's meeting is going to focus on vaccine prioritization and doing away with some of the rigid rules regarding who can get vaccinated and when. What do you think might come out of that meeting? And do you think that that might allow Germany to move forward more quickly?
I don't see a big income from that day today. We have one main question is when do we get enough vaccinations? Backwards, we didn't have enough. And we were too slowly. And this is why people are really, really angry. At the moment, we are a little bit on a shifting point, because now the more and more vaccine doses come into the country. At first, we had like this vaccination camps where old people were invited and had to go to. Now, a lot of doctors all over the country gets at least some doses, and the numbers of the vaccinations really raise. And I think the more and more people you start to hear a lot of people, oh, my parents now are vaccinated, I could get a vaccination dose next week or so. This starts now, and I think this is a real turning point at the moment. And if the government or if everybody together can really speed up this process at the moment, before that there won't be a political shift in Germany, because this is really the main issue here. This is what's like a dark cloud over the country. And we also, of course, you always compare yourself to the better ones. If we hear in Israel, people are sitting in the bars and restaurants together. If we see, if we read in Great Britain, they are close to herd immunity. If we see the other countries don't have these restrictions anymore. Remember the last year with Trump's elections campaign. Same for him. The situation by then was so bad in the United States that he could almost, doesn't matter what he was saying, the people were saying, yeah, but Corona. And this is not going well. And at the moment, it's a little bit like this. So for me, this is not the big elephant in the room, because it's obvious. This is the main key point at the moment. The people want a government who solves problems for them. And if they don't, or if the government doesn't solve this problem, we might try out another one. As simple as that.
In that sense, I mean, change could be on the horizon. Yet, having said that, if somebody had said to me 2 months ago that the situation in the U.S. would be what it is today, I might not have believed it. And so, I'm somewhat hopeful that things can turn around relatively quickly in Germany.
Absolutely. This is why at the beginning your first question was about the stock of this pulse. When the summer gets better, and we are getting vaccination now, when the summer gets better, as soon as people are vaccinated, they lose the fear. They are willing to focus on other political questions. This is why I'm saying Corona is the key role in this elections. Before this is not solved, I think most of the voters are not willing to discuss other problems, listen to other big ideas. Also, this is in Germany at the moment the big thing. And after this, I know we have other big things, but this is the thing.
Yeah, and I think that the coming to terms with the pandemic is the first step for everyone, right? In terms of the next path, the path forward. So perhaps related to that, one of the things that I've been following a little bit has been this somewhat controversial set of videos that several dozen German stars have posted. I don't know how familiar our American viewers or listeners are with this, but under the hashtag alles dicht machen, or shut everything down, about 50 German stars made short videos commenting on the government's pandemic restrictions. And it's gotten a fair amount of press. It's been recognized by a lot of people, but it's also polarized the community to some degree. Can you give us sort of a read on what this movement or what these videos tell us and how people are responding to them?
Yeah, you have to know, I think, a little bit for the background. So this was really very famous actors in Germany, and the videos were ironic, and they were saying, let's close everything down in Germany because until the virus is dead, and let's really close down everything. And after this, the whole country would be like, or the society and economy would be dead also. I think these actors acted from a very special point of view, from their very personal point of view. Theaters are closed in Germany. The cultural life is really on a 0 point at the moment. And of course, for the actors and for the singers, it's really a very hard time. I think they start to broadcast again, or the film work has started again, but yeah, a lot of people are not earning money anymore in this sector. They are sitting at home, and especially people in creative jobs, you know, who live from interacting, representing the feeling they smell in the country. So it was a hard time for them, and from that point they were criticizing this lockdown policy, because from their perspective, from their life, they want to act again. They want to go in front of the camera again. They want to stand in the theater again. But the thing is, the society at the moment is so paralyzed, because on the one hand we see the hospitals are full and people are dying. On the other hand, you have those personal consequences. But the way they made these videos, a lot of people saw these very privileged and well-earning actors put their point of view above the dying, above the real, the people who are really suffering at the moment, the nurses in the hospital, the doctors, and the ill. And so they got a lot of very harsh critics on that videos. A lot of actors from this 50 put their videos back and said, I'm out of the movement. But no matter if you like these videos or not, for me, it just shows how the German society at the moment is in a state of high alertness, and a lot of people are just fed up with everything. And then there comes a thing like this, and everybody starts on beating on each other. I hope that's. I mean, also we have bad weather in Germany. That's everything comes stone by stone on a big problem. Yeah, people are sitting here the winter. The weather doesn't get better. They're staying at home, and then this is coming and this is coming. So we are now in the spring and the summer. Hopefully it gets better, but it's a real complex situation. And maybe if you or the Americans in this discussion think of the situation you had in the last year, maybe you can feel where we are at the moment.
So Matthias, maybe jumping off of that as we start to bring this to a close, you talked about the high level of frustration, and I think that's probably true on multiple fronts, right? Both in terms of the pandemic and the pandemic response, but also in terms of politics, and the two are interconnected at the moment. You mentioned that there's sort of a high state of alert, that people are fed up, that people are anxious. What would you sort of advise us as observers of contemporary Germany to be watching in the weeks and months ahead as we try to take the pulse of what's going on in Germany and try to understand these developments in the run up to the election?
Yeah, I think one key poll will be the personal polls of Armin Laschet. He really has to get his numbers higher now. And the attention is on him now. He is the candidate now. And if it's not starting now, he is already late. He is already late. Now the success has to come. Because otherwise, I said this, I used the term loser image earlier. Yeah, I mean, he already won 2 elections in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is Germany's biggest state. So he is a person who is capable to win elections. He has done that before, but in the moment he has a completely other image, and he needs to get rid of this image, and his polls has to rise. This is the first real thing. This is one key.
And if I can jump in for just a second, I mean, even his polls in North Rhine-Westphalia are down. His popularity at home is down, which has to be an additional hurdle for him as he tries to make a case on a national basis. Yeah.
So that needs to change. That needs to be observed. And the second, I think, is really because that is the big problem, is number of vaccination, number of cases in Germany, corona cases in Germany. I think these are the 2 players. And then Annalena Baerbock, if she maybe 4 months, in 5 months, you can do mistakes too. This is her role on everything. So maybe the situation gets better. Maybe Laschet's numbers could get a little bit higher, and she does mistakes. Maybe she doesn't. But this is the third factor I would look on.
Well, Matthias, I want to thank you for taking a Kaffeepause or a Apfelsaftschorle pause with us this afternoon in Germany, this morning in New York and in the US. This has been a great discussion, and I think I speak for all of us when I say we wish you well in your new job starting next week, next month. And we look forward to staying in touch with you and having you back to hear your insights and your analysis. But thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great discussion. To everybody who tuned in, thanks for being with us. We hold these Kaffeepause events on a weekly basis, every Monday morning in New York, afternoon in Berlin, and we hope to see many of you back again next week.